Thinking Aloud, and this week, thinking back 2 years, when here in London, not just in London, to be fair, in some other parts of the country too, but very much the epicentre was the capital, there were some of the most disturbing, frightening and violent events that I think many people would have remembered. The London riots were going on at this time a couple of years ago. 2 years on, is it all forgotten about now? Have lessons been learnt from what we saw? There are so many questions hanging in the air. Unfortunately, we have two people with us this week who are very well equipped to get to grips with some of them. Pauline Pierce, who was very much in the thick of the action, as we will see in a minute, and George, the poet Mpanga, who was watching it all play out from home in northwest London. I think, like the rest of us, probably scratching his head and wondering what on earth was happening. Pauline, to turn to you first of all, I don't know whether people might recognise you sitting there now 2 years on, but they probably will when they see this footage that I guess you've seen umpteen times.
She's working hard to make her business work, and then you lot want to go and burn it up for what? Just to say that you're warring and you're bad man. This is about a man who got shot in Tottenham. This ain't about having fun on the road and busting up the place. Get it real, black people. Get real.
In the middle.
Do it for a cause. If we're fighting for a cause, let's fight for a cause. You lot me off. I'm ashamed to be a Hackney person.
I hope we won't have to bleep you.
A few bleeps there, yeah.
You are the Hackney heroine.
The Hackney heroine, indeed I am.
When you see that 2 years on, what does it make you think?
It makes me wonder what on earth was I thinking at the time. But it takes me right back to there. It was a very scary and stressful moment because I was seeing so much going on. Cars burning, shops being looted, people absolutely devastated, running away from their homes. I mean, like we can see on the clip there, people were scared and crying. Some were dancing and singing and really celebrating the fact that, you know, this is kind of a liberation in a way. And for me, it was like, you're all going to end up in jail. This is just total madness. And it's not going to prove anything. It's not going to achieve anything. And so said, so done.
George, you will have seen that footage as well of Pauline. Part of the reason it was so invigorating, I guess, at the time, to see her, you know, mouthing off, as you were, sounding off in that way, was because there wasn't an awful lot of that going on in those frightening moments, was there?
No, there wasn't, I don't think, a strong public voice of condemnation from within the community, but that was a very widely shared feeling. A lot of us just had our heads in our hands. A lot of us felt disappointed, a bit betrayed, and I for one was sitting at home. I'm a poet. I couldn't bring myself to write on it. To this day, I haven't really written a poem about the riots because it was such a deeply emotional experience.
When do you think you'll get to a point where it won't be so deeply embedded that you will be able to get that objective view on events?
When I feel like our community is saying something much louder than the memory of the riots, I'll be able to talk about the riots.
Yeah.
The thing was, it wasn't just Hackney, obviously, where you live, or indeed northwest London. It was all across the capital and in other parts of the country as well. It was rich people, poor people,
black, white, indifferent. There was, you know, the sad thing was, as usual, when anything happens, people always ready to point fingers, and it was like, oh, it's the gangs are out there, the blacks were out there, you know, the people who live on the estates, the hoodlums. It actually was quite a surprise to people when they found out there were all walks of life out there. There were the Kurds, there were the Jews, there were the Polish, there were the West Indians, the Africans, the Indians. Everyone who was anyone, everyone was out there.
So why do you get that collective moment of madness that so many people from all sorts of different walks of life and backgrounds are pitching into?
I think one thing that sparked the riots was that it came from a place of complete disillusionment with society. Came from people who just felt like there was nothing here for them. That's not in any way a cop-out, and it's not a justification of what happened. But when people don't care about the place around them, from the businesses to the people that have built the businesses, you get that kind of frenzy as happened with the riots. And I think that frenzy is something very basically human and very animalistic. So when it grips people, it takes a life of its own, and it just becomes people just taking chances.
And could that happen again?
Yeah, no, it definitely could happen again. But I think the reason it really could happen again is because this government has done nothing to address it in a way that matters.
Well, one of the questions I'm interested in is a lot of people talked about why the riots happened and try to get to grips with some of the causes. But why, if the seeds are still there today, as they were a couple of years ago, why haven't the riots happened again? Why haven't we seen similar outbreaks of
well,
violence?
I'd say, for one, probably half of the people are still in jail. And those that have come out of jail are probably a bit, what, as we would describe it, a bit shook. You know, it's kind of, boom, it's happened, and now they've got to come out and reintegrate into society again and find a place where they can fit and put their life back on track.
Well, some people say, good, that means the police, they did their job, people have learned a lesson.
No, because what we've got to, sorry, George, but what we've ended up having is now a set of people that have now come out with criminal records. So whatever problems they had before, they've now got an added problem that they've now got a criminal record, which is going to be just as hard now for them to get jobs anyway.
There's a big difference between trimming the leaves and uprooting the plant. I think what has happened by sending a lot of people to prison is that the government have kind of trimmed the leaves. They've moved the immediate threat off the perceived threat, and they've kind of acted as though the criminal behaviour that happened that day was the problem, and that was the root of everything that has happened. The reason I say the riots can happen again is because the seeds for that social discord, for that sense of disunity, for that sense of disillusionment are still completely in effect, and they're going to blow up in our faces generations later, if that.
But it can't, the reason that we haven't seen similar outbreaks so widespread can't just be because everyone's still banged up in prison.
Well, no, it's obviously, it's not because everyone's still banged up in prison, but I feel that people are very cunning as well. They obviously know that the heat is on at the moment. It's, you know, it's still only 2 years. Even though it's a long time, it's still not really a long time, if you get what I mean. I mean, the last set of riots we had were about 20 odd years ago. I don't even think you were old enough to. Right, there you go. So as far as I'm concerned, what we don't want is another 10, 15 years from now, the same thing happening.
I think there is also something to be said for apathy. I think there's a degree of political disengagement with groups that are likely to riot. So people who are most adversely affected by some of the changes that are happening politically, socio-economically, the effects, either the awareness isn't there and the effects haven't really come to the worst fruition just yet.
I think most of us have seen it's taken a while in a lot of the places that were affected, but those high streets have been pretty much cleaned up. Most of those shops that were burnt out are open again. Do you think there's a desire, not all of them, but most of them now, do you think there's a desire on the part of the government, the local councils and the rest of it, just to sort of brush it under the carpet and move on?
Well, they need to pull their fingers out. I mean, sadly, we've got Hackney Council have decided to take that 5 million or how much ever they were given and open a fashion hub. This money was given to revamp the borough and rebuild and put something there that can last forever, that the people of the community can enjoy and benefit from. But sadly, how is a fashion hub going to help us? All right, it'll bring more people into the country, into the borough. We'll get more jobs, I suppose. But will those hoodies that are in Pembury Estate and Holly Street Estate and London Fields Estate, are they going to benefit? I doubt it. They won't be educated enough for the job.
Is that the sort of thing you worry about?
Completely. Your question hit the nail on the head. The fact that everything has kind of simmered down for now and we have this veneer of calm and control, we can lie to ourselves and pretend that everything is okay now. But the fact is, I mean, I was just reading about the cuts to legal aid the other day. What we're being set up for is horrendous.
We've been set for disaster.
From the privatisation of the NHS to the direction that education is going in terms of its
the academies
privatisation,
privatising.
To everything from even just the way local budgets are handled. There is no real urgency to engage those people that are likely to riot again. And when it does happen again, we're going to have the same police state attitude that is not going to solve anything.
But another question, I said, why haven't they happened again? But equally, why did they stop? Because at the time, I think a lot of it felt as though this was going to run and run. It just stopped. You talk about a police state. Surely it stopped because the police did their job.
It stopped because they did what they should have done. My old parents used to say, don't do in the last what you could have done in the first. You understand? If you know that there's a riot, get all those police in straight away.
What do you think?
You know, they waited till the end to do that.
I think what's key is that the riots weren't a political demonstration. We talk about the political factors that have contributed to it, but you have to remember that the people that were rioting didn't have any banners and they weren't really pushing for anything. So when the police did come in, which was necessary completely, that the message was kind of received and everyone shut up because they didn't really have anything that they were articulating in the first place.
But my argument is, why did they not, when they rushed off on the fourth day and said, right, we're going to get all the heavy armoury in, we're going to get everyone up there, they've got to stop this now. They could have done that on the first day. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I could have worked it out. You know, this is going to spread, this is going to get worse. And it actually did. You know, Croydon ended up practically burning down, you know. So why did it take them that long? And sadly, yes, we did have some police cuts just before the riot, so that didn't help. But, you know, there's so many setbacks there, and I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of it. But like I said, there's been too much lip service for the past 2 years. Everyone's let's do this, let's do that. Well, I feel now is the time for us to stop talking, get out there and do it and make it known that something's been done in a positive way.
Well, it's nice to see that you're just as passionate now as you were a couple
Always
of years
will
ago.
be.
Speaking to both of you takes me right back to remembering what was going on a couple of years ago. Clearly you feel that there's still the possibility that some of these sorts of things could potentially happen again and issues that have still not been properly addressed. But I think we'd all agree that as we have further discussions on Thinking Aloud over the next few weeks, let's hope that it's during the course of another long, hot but quieter summer.